Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. As ever, good man to the right of me, Alan Quinlan, joins me. And great to have a special guest and World Cup winner today in Butch James. Butch, how are you getting on? Great to have you on the pod.
Yeah, I finally got my connection all connected, battling a bit with my technical skills, but good to be part of the pod and nice to see both of you.
Alan, straight in, we chatted about it on Sunday, South Africa game, getting over the line. Have you had a bit more time to reflect on it? What did you make of it? It was such a good spectacle.
Well, first of all, it's great to have Butch on. If he was playing in the modern game, a little bit like myself, we probably wouldn't last on the pitch too long because Butch liked the chest-high tackles and it might suit him nowadays with all the emphasis on lowering the tackle height. I'm only joking, Butch, obviously, but you're
No, I agree with you 100%.
Incredibly physical player. You like to put a hit in, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, after the weekend, obviously from an Irish point of view, very happy. We're under no illusions, I don't think, and Andy Farrell, the Irish team, won't be under any illusions as to everything is sorted now. Ireland are great. This is it. They're going to go and win the World Cup. They got fortunate. They didn't probably play the way they wanted to play. That's down to the quality of the team they were playing. South Africa are an amazing side. I probably was one of the few pundits, and it's good that Butch knows this, that predicted South Africa would beat Ireland based on the power, the strength, the quality as well. There's a lot made about the physical power, but this South African team, very skillful. Of course, they play to their strengths, but they've incredible X-factor players. They can move that ball when they want. They've some of the best players in the world playing on that side, and they're incredibly well coached, by Jack Nienaber, Rassie and Felix Jones, Irishman in the mix as well. So, the pleasing thing about Ireland, aside from the performance, was their resilience, their fight to stay in the game, to physically kind of put pressure on that Springbok breakdown and to probably keep believing that they were under no doubt state to work incredibly hard. And I think most Irish people would admit that particularly that period after half time up to most of that second half, South Africa looked like the team that were getting on top. They were making it very uneasy for Ireland, and of course they look at their performance and see some mistakes and errors as well. But it was a hell of a test match. Everybody right across the world is talking about this. I see people in America in different sports tweeting about these crazy Irish and South African players at the World Cup. Loads of English soccer pundits, soccer players in England. It's amazing. So this game captured the imagination right across the world, and the good thing after the match, there was no big debates, bar, I think, maybe Butch might elaborate on this from the South African point of view at the end, that was a maul, and then the ball comes back and Ben O'Keefe blew up the whistle. But, Ireland probably were fortunate in the end, but I think they kind of created fortune, so they stayed in the fight, if you know what I mean, and it'll be interesting to see what Butch thinks about the kicking and stuff. South Africa obviously missed a couple of kicks, but psychologically it's a big boost for Ireland, and it's not a surprise either that they were kind of in the fight and right in the mix with a wonderful South African team, because I think the top three teams, we said it from the start, South Africa, Ireland and France, are a level above all the other teams. That doesn't automatically mean they'll win the World Cup, but they're right at the top of the pile, and I think out of that three, the winner will come.
Butch, Alan says a big boost for Ireland. What about South Africa in general? I don't think you'd be shocked the physicality levels, but did you feel South Africa just didn't take their chances, or full credit to Ireland?
I think a bit of both. I think I agree with Alan. I mean, a rugby game where the scoreline was 13-8, anyone, if you had told them that's what the score's going to be, they would have thought, it's going to be a boring game and not really good to watch. But I agree, it was one of the best test matches we've ever seen. So I think it probably came down to a number of reasons. I think the Irish physicality, I'm sure they would, once the Springboks had their team and also their bench, the forwards coach for Ireland were driven to them from the minute the team was announced exactly what was coming and to match them physically. And you could just see with the way the Irish team were talking to each other in the warm-up and pre-game that they were fired up and ready to take the Springboks on physically, and they certainly did match up in guard. So it was a great spectacle, especially nowadays we were talking earlier about the game, how it's changing, and they're taking away from the collision quite a bit. But on Sunday we certainly did see a lot of good big collisions, which is always great for a rugby fan to watch. So I thought it was an interesting game. The Irish obviously kicking for touch instead of taking their points with a goal kicker like Johnny Sexton, doesn't miss too many. So that was quite interesting for me, and that just showed their intent to come at the Springboks and run at them and take them on. So that was great to see. And then I think the Springbok defense was also really, really good. And I think, like one of you mentioned earlier, the Irish weren't really allowed to play because it was probably because of that defense and in-your-face sort of defense that the Springboks had. So, yeah, it was just an amazing. I did feel that the Springboks didn't take their chances. They did have quite a number, and especially with the boot, missing a few kicks, which probably cost them in the end. But all in all, I was happy with their performance. I thought the Springboks played really nicely and really well, and it didn't really make me think, sure, we out of the World Cup and not going to be there in the semis or anything like that. It actually gave me a bit more confidence. We were playing against a really, really good team, number one team in the world. And yeah, I think this Ireland team is really, really special. So the performance that the Springboks put in actually gave me confidence that we will be there come semi-finals and playoff time. And I really, really do believe that that will be the final, Ireland-South Africa.
Very gracious in defeat there, Alan, isn't he? Butch, full credit to Arnold, he's saying. But, he believes it'll be the final. I asked you on Sunday how the game will differ. If it was the final, how do you think it will change?
Not a lot from the intensity point of view, because, we know South Africa, that's in their DNA to be really physical. If I was playing in that South Africa pack, I wouldn't want to be, moving away from using the scrum dominance that they have against most teams. The line-out dominance in the maul, the physicality of actually running at people around the side of breakdowns. Obviously, you want to play good territory and play in the right areas as well. And for any forward, you want your 9 and 10 putting you on the other end of the field, the attacking zone. But I don't think it'll differ usually. I think both sides, and I agree with Butch, I think South Africa, again, they won't walk away from this game thinking, God, we're in turmoil here. We've got to change everything. We've got to bring in a raft of new players. No, that's not the case. This game could have went either way. If South Africa had kicked some of the penalties that they had, maybe Ireland would have went up the field and got a score, would have reacted. So who knows? I think Ireland have earned the respect of World Rugby. I think we've been in positions, particularly in 2019, where we got to that world number one ranking based off winning a Grand Slam in 2018, going to Australia, winning a series and beating New Zealand in November. It was probably a false ranking. We had a disastrous year in 2019. Six Nations was really poor, the World Cup warm-ups, and then the World Cup was disappointing. So there's something different about this team, and we've seen it with them going winning a series last year in New Zealand, winning a Grand Slam, winning November matches. So they have a real steel about them, but they have a quality as well. They're really good players, and that's the pleasing part. So I don't think either side will change a lot. I think they'll try and be better in certain areas. Ireland's line-out was obviously deficient and an issue. Again, no surprise that the pressure that Etzebeth and Mostert are putting on there and Peter Steph du Toit, they're world class. They have brilliant line-out options, and Ireland were a little bit naive, slow on the throw, slow on the movement. And if you're any bit hesitant against a Springbok pack, they're gonna steal ball. One or two throws that the timing was off. But for any team to lose 6 lineouts in a game, if you said that before a game, certainly for me as someone who was big into lineouts, I would say it's going to be hard to win that game. So it's incredible that they did. They'll try and fix that, obviously. I think South Africa will try, if they were doing something different, would try and get more dominance in that attack zone and be a bit more patient. I think Ireland didn't allow him a lot of options to get into that 22, and we know and we've seen that when South Africa get in there, they can be really ruthless. So there's a couple of things: switching off at breakdowns, being a little bit quicker to the clean out. Ireland won 9 turnovers in the game. It's a big number, and it's unlikely that would happen again if they did meet. But look, it's hypothetical. I think, like I said, France, Ireland, and South Africa are a level above. That doesn't mean on their day that a New Zealand or an England or an Argentina or even a Fiji could trouble one of these teams. But on paper, they're the strongest teams. If they met in the final again, well, I know the French people wouldn't like it, but it would be incredible. But there's a lot of steps to go before then. Ireland have got to play Scotland next week. You take your eye off the ball there, and they're dangerous. And then obviously New Zealand on their day, and Butch will know this, you played against them many times. Even though it's not the same New Zealand as old, on their day, and they showed that in the Rugby Championship, particularly in that first 20 minutes at that game in Mount Smart in July.
Yeah.
They can get it right. They have some serious players, but they're not the same. So who knows? Rugby is about, on the day, and it would be incredible if that had happened. But I can guarantee you that Rassie Erasmus or Andy Farrell don't want to hear any mention of finals or meeting up again. They've work in hand between now and then.
Well, we both just brought it up, so that's a good idea. But if we look at the 10 jersey for South Africa, Manny Lebok and then Andre Pollard, as a former 10, best place to talk about it. Obviously, Lebok missed a few kicks, but he'll put that probably past him and get on with it. But which way would you go if you were the South African coaching setup? Which way would you go for Tonga at the weekend?
Yeah, I think for the weekend against Tonga, they will probably go with Andre at 10 and give him a run. He hasn't played much rugby, so to have him over there, even if he is over there as a reserve, you need to be giving him some game time and letting him have a run around. So I'm sure they'll go with him on the weekend. I feel really sorry for Mani. Obviously, he has got the responsibility of the goal kicking, but besides the goal kicking, I think he's been outstanding in a Springbok jersey. I think since Rassie took over and then under Jacques Nienaber, I think our attack with ball in hands probably been the best it's ever been under those two coaches. So, and I would put that down to the way Mani's been playing. So I really do feel sorry for the guy because he's added so much value to the Springbok squad. His line kicking for me is exceptional, especially from a penalty and kicking it into the 5-yard line, which gives those forwards that chance to only maul it 5 meters to score the try. So for me, I really feel for the guy. I hope he can sort his kicking out and maybe fix or find something that he's just been missing so that he doesn't miss too many, because unfortunately when it does come down to a final, it might just be that one or those 2 kicks that don't go over that will cost you. So it's a tough call for the coaches. I think, like I said, they will play Andre this weekend and see how he goes. Even if he doesn't start, I'm sure they'll try to get him as close to 40 minutes as they can, and then then they've got a bit of a headache. But I think obviously in South African public, everyone's talking about the kicking and the missed kicks, so they all want Andre to start, and because they're feeling that if he's on the field, he's not going to miss a kick. But he's also human. He's also been out of the game for a while, so we haven't seen how he's kicking at the moment. So it will be interesting to see how that debate goes and which one the coaches go for.
And I suppose his biggest strength, Butch, is he's been there and done that, Andre. But as you say, he hasn't played a lot of games recently.
Yeah, definitely. He's got the experience. I mean, he won a under-20 championship with South Africa when he was still at school. And I felt that from then on, even that experience when he was only 18 years old really did give him that experience that every number 10 probably needs. And we saw that at the 2019 World Cup. He was very cool, calm, and slotted his penalties when he needed to. So he definitely does have a cool head on his shoulders, so that will be invaluable. And I think defensively, nothing against Mani's defense. I think he's pretty solid on defense, but defensively, Andre's maybe a little bit more solid. I think when you got the likes of a Bondi Aki, we saw him make a brilliant break from just outside his 22. When you got big guys like that running at you, maybe you would rather have Andre there. I'm not too sure. I think Marnie probably uses his speed to close the space out and make a softer tackle than letting the guy get a bit of momentum and running at you. So, yeah, a lot for the selectors and the coaches to consider. But, I think it's a nice headache to have.
A former 10 talking about physicality levels.
Yeah, Butch, did you ever find yourself in that position where you missed kicks in a big game? And if so, maybe you didn't. If so, how would you deal with it now if you're Manny Libok? Lots of people talking about him. He's kind of centre of attention. I see a lot of people saying, give him a break. You know, Sia Khaleesi came out, you know, last week or a couple of weeks ago, backing him up as well, that it's a team game.
Yeah.
How would you deal with it?
Yeah, it's really hard to turn it around when you're on the field. I think from a personal point of view, when I was kicking and even in a warm-up, you know, I didn't like to be kicking out in the field. I like to take it almost onto the try line and just aim at the pole, because if you do start missing one or two in front of the poles, and then that's playing on the back of your mind when you do run out to the field to take to the game, you know. So it's definitely a confidence thing, the kicking, and I suppose it's the same for a hooker. You know, I was really impressed actually. I know the Irish lost a lot of lineouts, but they lost a lot of those lineouts early on in the game, and the way they came back and started winning their lineouts, I was very impressed with that. It's quite often that can downward spiral, and you could end up not winning a lineout, you know. So I thought that the way they came back and made sure that they did win their line-out ball was pretty impressive, because after that first 20 minutes, them losing 3 or 4, I thought, oh no, that's it. We've got every single, like, just make sure you kick the ball out and we will win the ball back, you know. But they did. They came back nicely there, and you got to give them a lot of credit for that as well, because I do feel like a hooker and the goal kicker is pretty similar. When you lose that confidence, it's pretty hard to get it back.
But your last one on the kicking, when you were playing, you had Franz Steen and Percy Montgomery as well to share, I suppose, the load of the kicks. Did you feel that more as a pressure thing, or was it actually quite good if you missed one, someone else would take one or not?
Yeah, I must say, I think as a fly-off, I always liked the responsibility that a fly-off had, and I suppose goal kicking was a part of that. But to take the restarts, or the line kicks, or the 22 dropouts, you know, for me, I enjoyed doing that because I felt it was my job. And if someone took that away from me, I felt that I wasn't sort of everything that I could for the team. But I must admit, when you've got a kicker, and in 2007 he didn't miss too many, it was great to know that Monty was kicking for goal. But if you asked anyone how they thought Marnie played, everyone's going to say that he was poor, and that was because he had missed those kicks, you know. So it's a lot of pressure. If you don't get the goal kicks and get the conversions over, then you're going to end up having a poor game. So for myself, I enjoyed it in 2007 when Percy was kicking for a goal, because I knew that he was kicking better than me and was better for the team. But I was still taking the restarts, kicking for the line and so on. And so I still had my place in the team. I wasn't just there to pass the ball sort of thing. So it definitely took a bit of pressure off, but I knew it was for the better of the team.
Alan, what do you make of the light system, Razzie and Jack, 9 and bar?
Not a lot, really, because I suppose, again, I would think that, you know, obviously for top class international players, that they can make their decisions down on the field, but look, it's the way Razzie wants to do it and Jack Nainenbar want to do it. They want to make those decisions. I thought the 2 long range kicks from Faf de Klerk, certainly the second one, probably should be pumped down into the corner and go and try and build some pressure on Ireland. But there's a debate about it. I find Razzie really intriguing in everything he does. So I kind of like that it's something different. Some people are saying to me, well, these players should be able to make their own decisions. Probably. And I played with Ron O'Gara for so many years, whereas we got a penalty in any sort of range, even if it was kind of an unlikely kick. It's his call. If he wants to go for it, he goes for it. okay, there's other matches there where you have a good score and you feel straight away it's going into the corner. We're seeing out the game here, whatever. But, I think they should be able to make their decisions. And maybe if Pollard is on there, it's different because he's probably taking control a little bit there. But I find it entertaining, so I'm not going to criticise it. But there is an element of that.
But the clip is Felix holds it up. Razzie's actually speaking and Nainavar's having a drink.
Yeah, well, he's probably what we probably didn't see is Jack was probably telling Felix, stick up your cone there.
So he's the orchestrator and telling him
Razzie's probably screaming information to one of the other messengers going on to the forwards or to full back or to somebody else to do something. So it's intriguing and it's entertaining. And I know some people criticise Razzie a lot about the after the lines when he had that big rant about Nick Berry. Probably crossed the line for sure, but there's always something interesting there, and I like that. But he's a shrewd coach as well. I remember when Rassie came to Munster first, I rang Vian Dupree, who played under him at the Cheetahs, and Vian played with me in Munster for a few years. And Rassie was always thinking out of the box, even back in those early days with the Cheetahs. And that light system was happening at the stadium in Bloemfontein. I'm sure Butch was there a few times seeing those lights. So I like it. But I do think, yes, top-class international players should have a feel of the game on the pitch and be able to make those decisions. Captain and leadership group, sometimes I think they should be able to make those decisions themselves.
Butch, your dealings with Razzie and Jack, if you have any, or just in general, what do you make of the whole trio there? With Felix Jones, of course.
No, but look, I agree with everything Alan said. I think they really are. Rassie's by far the cleverest rugby coach I've been able to deal with. I think I was fortunate to actually play my first test match with Rassie, so I played a little bit with the Springboks with him. In those days, he was quite a joker and not as serious as he is now as a coach. So it's good memories. And he was also actually one of my heroes growing up. I loved him, the way he played as a flank. He was the biggest guy, but really did get stuck in and also had a bit of skill. So I really enjoyed the way he played. And I love the way he coaches and thinks out of the box and really does try to come up with new things. I think back in the day with the Cheetahs, with the lights, he actually used to, the players on the field there would make no calls. I think it was halfway through the season, they had made one or two poor decisions as a team, and he said, I'm taking that away from you and I'll make the calls for you. So I agree a bit with Alan, though. I think you've got to feel it on the field as well. Sometimes as players, especially as a pack of forwards, you might feel after a huge scrum that you've got the upper hand, you get the penalty, and then you want to go for the line, back your maul and go for the 7 points, and then you get a decision to go for poles, which would probably take the air out of the forwards thinking, no, let's go for it, and then you get the decision to go for poles. So it is a tough one. I think it's more just to get the message on clearer. I think a lot of coaches do probably send the message through their physios or the medical staff to make the call if it's poles or for the line. And I think Rassie just wanted to make it clearer with the lights that there's no broken telephone getting the message on. But I think it should be 50-50. I think the players should have the ability to overrule it. If it does come on that they need to go for goal or go for line, they should be able to overrule it.
And Butch, your take on the 7-1? I know we've talked about it here a lot in Ireland with the media and all over the world. But in South Africa, you're in Durban at the moment. Is the conversation to the local shop, or what about the 7-1 here? Or are we making too much out of it?
And Matt Williams is famous now in South Africa for last week's pod where he went to town on the 7-1. And very much entitled to his opinion. Obviously, we respect everyone's opinions. And there was a big reaction online, particularly from South African fans and journalists about Rassie. Tweeted Matt as well. Me tweeted the pod about Matt disagreeing. But what was the reaction like in South Africa?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit talked about. But to be honest, I thought when we played against New Zealand just before the World Cup at Twickenham, and that was the first time they went for the 7-1, I thought it was more of a he was forced to do it. I think I think it was Willie LaRue or one of the backline players that were on the bench pulled out through injury, and I just felt that he didn't want to risk Cheslin Colby or one of his other players in that game, so he just went for the 7-1, and it seemed to have worked then. And then again, I think against Ireland, I think the reason he put his team out so quickly and also put the 7 was maybe just to play a bit of mind games with Ireland and just to show Ireland exactly how they were wanting to play. I mean, most teams do know how South Africa normally want to play anyway. I think getting the team out early, making it a 7-1, maybe got them talking about it, their minds off maybe other things that they should be concentrating on. And I'm not too sure. I don't know. I kept saying week, I said, 7-1, it's interesting, but it's very risky.
Alan, what was interesting actually at the weekend, Faf de Klerk, with a glint in his eyes, said Anne-Marie Keegan for Virgin Media, said, we don't normally make the same mistakes twice, and said he really enjoyed the match. And they don't, to be fair. Like, he's itching to get back out there and prove a point.
Of course they are. Like, again, as I said at the start of this podcast, it's not patronising in any way. There's nobody in Ireland thinks now that they're the perfect scenario. We realise, and I think the Irish team realise themselves, that they're a very good side, and I like that they're very grounded, and that comes from obviously from the players, but from the coaching staff as well. Andy Farrell is a very laid back fella. He's quite comfortable in obviously what he's built with this team, the mental strength, the resilience that they have, but also realising that you can lose sporting events, you can do everything right. It's brilliant that Ireland are at this level. Again, it guarantees nothing, but when I played with Munster for a long time, when we were in a dominant era, one thing Mick Galway, our captain, always said is, if we lose again, we don't lose 2 in a row. We just don't. We've got to, whatever the case may be, find a reaction and find an anger and an aggression and a performance that we fix the rights, fix the wrongs pretty quickly. There's no guarantee with that, but you can imagine South Africa, if they did play Ireland again, yes, I still think there would be very little in it. I still think it'd be an incredibly mammoth task for us, the Irish team, to beat them again. Can they do it again if it happened? Yes, of course, but it's hypothetical now. But I think South Africa, yes, they're a wonderful side, and right across the board, there's no weakness. I can't see, there's no weakness there. I think the only thing you could say was the kicking the other night, if Pollard was back in there. Like Damien Dialenda, we watched him in Munster for a couple of years, and a team that was probably struggling. He's phenomenal. Lucanio, at 13, probably, would he go back into the side? Yes, even though Jesse Creel has done very well. Malcolm Marks obviously is a loss to them as well. So they're down a couple of, really top world-class players, but they've so much strength and depth that it doesn't seem to affect them that much. Of course, Faf de Klerk, he believes that, yes, they're still in the mix. And all of that South African squad will believe, yes, they're still in the mix, even though they've got to play, it's likely that they'll be playing France in a quarter-final. They'll fancy their chances there, and you could not bet against this team actually lifting the World Cup again, because they're that good.
Butch, just bringing you in there, Alan's talked about maybe South Africa not fearing Ireland, but no, they'll be up against it. New Zealand and then France, are they the three which stand out to you? Is there anyone else South Africa you think maybe might struggle against, or just those three?
To be honest, I wouldn't like to be playing against Fiji at the moment. I think the Fijians are just going to get better and better as the tournament goes on. So for me, it's the Fijians that I would worry about the most. But in saying that, I think, I think from now on in, I think against Tonga this weekend, they also, I think Ireland will probably have the same thing to think about, is that they've got to get up for it. They can't just think, okay, well, we had a huge game against Ireland and now we're going to have an easier game, so we can take it easy. But I think they've got to arrive and make sure that they prepare as well as they did against any other team.
And a final one to you, Butch, before we let you go. You've been very good with your time. This South Africa team, do you think they'll go on and win it? I know there's so many ifs and buts, but do you think they're better than the 2019 team? Or do you think actually the other teams around them are better? Or which way do you see it going?
I think the South African team is better than 2019, but in saying that, I think the teams around are also better. So I still believe the chances of Springboks winning it again are good. But like I said, there's a lot of good teams around them, and it's going to be tough. So we saw on the weekend, Ireland, number one team in the world, are outstanding. The French are unbelievable, and I wouldn't quite write off New Zealand just yet.
Alan, do you want to finish there with Butch and the Snakes?
I think there's from what I can see there in the picture, there's a green mamba hanging out of a tree there behind you, so just don't get out of the car yet. I'm only joking, but the next time
I'm going to wait for you to come get it, because I'm not going to catch it.
Yeah, well, the next time I'm back in South Africa, you have to, you tried to get me sorted with a snake handler last April. As John de Villiers told you, I'm obsessed with snakes. The more poisonous, the better. Black mambas, green mambas, puff adders, all that. So do your research.
I'm gonna start planning now.
Do your research, start planning now,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to going out snake hunting with you when I'm back in South Africa. And thank you
You're
so much.
going by yourself, eh? I'm not coming with you. So.
Oh God, I thought you have to come with me. You have to come out with me.
But you were a 10, you have to take control.
I'll organise it, but you no.
Okay, well, good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for coming on. It's
brilliant.
great. There you go, have it on. For World Cup winner.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Chat to you
Butch.
soon. Great
Cheers,
to have him on, but you can see there he's still confident South Africa could go on and win this.
Of course, yeah. They're not going to be. They're disappointed. You lose a game, but they're not going to be disillusioned. There's no issues here as regards tactically, on the day, and that's rugby for you. When two really close teams come up against each other, somebody has to probably win the game, and that's the reality. Unless you get a draw. So yeah, they're not going to be too disillusioned. I think they can look back, and on the other side of that, I think Ireland will look at their game and think they can be better in certain areas. And the obvious one, as we said, is the line out. There's probably a couple of options in attack that they didn't take, and there's always things that you analyse and look at, and then you hope to go out the next time you play, not necessarily against the same team, but just be better at the next time match you play. And for Ireland, it's. If Ireland lose 6 lineouts against Scotland, well, they're going to have problems. They're going to be issues. Scotland are a very good side, and they're a dangerous side. On paper, Ireland are a stronger side, but Gregor Townsend is, and I've said this for 2 years now, Scotland are going to be rubbing their hands for this fixture. They'll really feel they can get amongst Ireland here and rattle them and maybe get them at a lower emotional pitch than they were for the South African. And Butch said it there, it's hard to get right up again and get all that. The crowd was, even before the game, the atmosphere was incredible. Will it be the same in Paris? Well, I'm sure the atmosphere will be really good and the Irish will be there in their droves again. But Ireland have got to generate this momentum themselves, because stand off Scotland alone, play, they can really punish you. Finn Russell, Tupelotu, Van der Merwe, Blair Kinghorn, these guys, they can really hurt teams, and they will fancy their chances of doing that. And it's a last ditch attempt for them. If they don't beat Ireland, they're out of the World Cup. So Ireland have got to improve in certain areas. Will you get the same physical pressure as South Africa? Well, that's kind of unique to any team that plays South Africa. They feel a heat and an aggression and a pressure that's probably at the very top level. Right across the board, you never get a minute on the ball, and they're so physical and strong. So yeah, it's a challenging one for Ireland now. Obviously, having the weekend off, they've got a chance to recover, look at some stuff, try and fix it, and that'll be the goal for this period of time. First and foremost, recovery. There's a lot of work gone in over the summer and pre-season, so it's about fine-tuning things and making sure they get that mental approach right for Scotland. But again, they'll know Scotland are going to throw everything at them, and it's a really dangerous game for Ireland and a really challenging one. So they could undo all the great work they've done in 180 minutes against a very dangerous side.
And if everyone is fit for the 23, how many changes do you expect Andy Farrell to make?
Minimal.
Only a couple?
Well, it's up to Andy Farrell. Obviously, I don't make the decisions. He may rotate a few positions, but like for me, and I've said this probably, I think I said it last week. Luckily enough, Ireland have had a good run on the injury front so far, but the week off is this week. They're all getting a break, so why would you give players another week off? Is that looking too far ahead and saying, oh God, we have a quarter-final to play? You've got to just figure out now the best team to play Scotland, and the best team to play Scotland is the strongest one that probably went out in the field on Saturday. Of course, if Jack Conan is back, he can come back in the mix. Maybe Ian Henderson comes in and either Ty Byrne or James Ryan sit in the bench. There might be a little bit of rotation there. There might be one change in the back row. Who knows? But there's not a lot of changes. There's minimal changes here. Maybe 2 or 3 changes out of the 15. Why would you not play Johnny Sexton? Well, in case he gets injured, people will say. But there's no point in not playing Johnny Sexton and Scotland beating you then, and there is no match the following week. So they've got to focus on
Sexton wants to play.
Of course, and all these. This is the start of their season. People forget that, and don't realise sometimes. Malcolm Marks got injured in training. I've seen teammates over the years get injuries in training and be out for a period of time in mismatches. It can happen. It's a calculated risk. Ireland have got to pick the best team for Scotland and respect that as it is. That it's a very, very difficult game, and Scotland could beat Ireland. Who knows? They might bring their best performance that they've brought in the last 2 years and beat Ireland. They're capable of beating Ireland. They have to bring a brilliant performance to do it. I think we'll acknowledge that, and Gregor Townsend will know that. But you pick the best team for Scotland, and whoever is available and fit, if they progress, then, well, you pick from that for the following week. I don't buy into the scenario of, a lot of people are saying about Anton Dupont, they should have been taken off at half time and all that stuff. Of course, the plan was to take him off in 55 minutes. Fabian Galtey has said that. But this is just, sometimes that bit of luck is against you. If Ireland are playing Romania next week, that's a different story. Yes, you make multiple changes and because of the level of opposition, but you can't do that against Scotland. So you make 7 or 8 changes here in the team and Scotland cause you massive problems and beat you. Well, it's over. The show is over. No way for me. I think you picked the strongest possible team.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, that is a while away yet. If we bring it closer to recent times, we must touch on Australia. That performance against Wales out of the World Cups, 40 points conceded. You said last week Eddie Jones will go at the end of the World Cup campaign. Has it changed, or just by going by speculation and different things?
I don't know if he'll go. I think, but he'll struggle to continue as the coach. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong thing. I think the results have been really poor. In his defence, he's picked a lot of young players, so that's a strong argument to say.
How's that in his defence though? If he had guys at home that could do a good job as well,
yeah, of course. But he backed players who were young, and a lot of the critics seem to be that he backed guys who haven't a lot of top level rugby played, even at Super Rugby level. So he thought they could do a job for him here. He was excited, and he left some very experienced players out of the squad. Will he go? I don't know. I think it'll be hard for him to keep his job, because I think there's obviously this is the first time ever that Australia haven't made the knockout stages, and it's just everything they did on Sunday night, particularly in that second half. I think they had a period of 10-15 minutes in the first half where they looked quite cohesive and dangerous, but again, Wales deserve credit. They snuffed them out. Their fitness level was really high, which again doesn't surprise me, because Warren Gatland was always big on being unbelievably fit. It sounds like it's something a box ticking scenario, but Australia didn't look fit. They'd look slow and cumbersome getting to the ball, their movement on the ground. And I know from my own experience with Gaddy, that's a massive part of preparing any team, particularly for World Cup and at the start of that off season. He's big into, pushing yourself to the limit from the fitness point of view. Some coaches stand back from this and they let their head of fitness look after it. But like Gaddy's standing over all this stuff. He's watching guys running through the woods and, doing the fitness sessions, getting up and down, getting sick in pre-season. He loves that. And Wales are very fit, and we've heard a lot about the torture and the pain they went through. So that is helping them as regards where they've come from. You know, they had a really poor Six Nations. They lost against Georgia last November. They lost against Italy the previous Six Nations. They've been on a very bad run. Gatti came in and took over for the Six Nations. It was very disappointing for them. So they deserve credit, but Wales were abysmal, and they made it quite easy in that second half. They had no answers to hard line speed and big numbers in their faces. Their kicking game was poor. Their line out, their scrum was capitulated. I was quite shocked at how bad it was, to be honest. But then, if you look at the run of results, they'd only won one game in 7, and so confidence must have been low. There's been lots of chopping and changing, and he's got this wrong. I think if you look back on it, you know, Michael Hooper, Quade Cooper, probably
Bernard Foley, you can name them, you know, whether those guys would be starting or not, but surely you'd want them involved. You know,
and you see,
we've talked about this for weeks.
World Cup is it sounds again very obvious, but Cup rugby sometimes, you know, South Africa won an ugly match against Wales in the 2019 semi-final, but it was Cup rugby they played, and you know, sometimes if you're lacking a little bit in attack, or you're not as good from an attacking point of view as the opposition, you know, you need to do the simple things well and play really good tactical rugby. And Australia don't even have that. Tactically, they're not good with their kicking game. And then when they get into the right areas, they lose lineouts, you know, and a lot of this stuff they just drained in confidence. So it's quite surprising, because I saw Australia last November in Dublin, and I thought these guys could be a shout for the World Cup. They were missing 6 or 7 players in that game against Ireland. They ran France very close in Paris. They lost narrowly to Ireland as well, and could have won that game. And I thought, get those players back. But, you know, they went to Italy and lost in Italy, didn't they? And then Dave Rennie gets the sack, and Eddie Jones took over. So, you know, maybe they will allow him stay. And
sorry, last one on that before we have to go. You say allow him to stay, but what do you make of the 5-year situation?
Well, he has a contract, yeah. So he's a
but
contract.
Speaking to Japan, if that's true or not true, but what do you make of it?
We don't know. But if he was speaking to another country, I think it's probably out of order as regards, particularly before the World Cup. I think obviously, the way the World Cup has panned out for him in Australia, after the World Cup, you could look at a situation that, you know, maybe he didn't just ring Australia as Japan himself, like somebody has made contact somewhere to his agent or something.
You sent them the same details.
Yeah, but I don't know if it actually happened.
Yeah.
You know,
that is
we need to see proof of that. But look, if it did, it's probably not a good look for him, and doesn't help his situation now. But there's deeper problems, obviously, with Australian rugby, and this, not just his team. But I'm surprised. I think they have a lot of good players, and I just think tactically they weren't. I couldn't really see any sort of game plan in any of the games, and they were really poor in the Rugby Championship as well. So it's it's a tough time for them, and it's tough if you're an Australian fan watching that, and probably frustrating, because I think they should be better.
Well, Alan, thank you as always. Plenty more rugby this weekend, and we'll hear your voice and co-commentary throughout the weekend. But it all starts tonight on Virgin Media as Uruguay take on Namibia. Thanks for listening.